Hey Emma,
Yes, Malin.
what do you call a hitman's Facebook?
I just don't know. What do you call it?
The assassin's feed. Hello, and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Especially if you're a hitman, right?
Yeah. Although it's called a news. I guess it is a news feed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't think of the Facebook page as a feed. I was trying to think of a different social media platform that
Twitter,
might have worked better.
I guess.
Twitter.
The hitman's Twitter.
There you go.
I thought about that, but I don't know. I think timeline. Right now it's the newsfeed.
Yeah,
now.
yours is the timeline, your profile. But then the actual where everybody else posts is your news feed. So I guess it does make sense.
Wow. Thank goodness, or I would have been kicked off the show.
She would have. It's written into her contract.
That if Emma thinks the joke not only isn't funny, but is unsuccessful in every sense of the word, then it becomes Talk This, I podcast alone.
Yeah.
Welcome, though. Thanks for joining us here on this lovely Sunday morning. Excuse me, I'm tripping over my words because I'm in Rome.
Yeah, she's forgotten to speak English. She's warming back into it now.
Buongiorno. Purely Italian now. Yes. I've also gained 100 pounds in pasta weight.
Yes. But do you know how to ask, where are the dogs?
No. Well, maybe. Where are the dogs? Something cane. I'm going to have to learn that one.
Yeah, that's the important phrase.
We have been seeing on my not Assassin's feed, like dog spots in Italy in the lead up to the trip. So if any of the dogs I see are half as good as those good boys, or have seen, sorry, any of the dogs, I'm sure I've seen some good dogs here.
Yes.
It's basically like I live above an Italian restaurant. It's basically like I'm already in Italy.
Pretty much. It does smell like garlic bread there every morning, so.
They charge us an extra $200 a month for the privilege.
You know, it's probably one of the more pleasant smelling spots in New York, so.
Wow, that was a real burn.
It's kind of stinky there.
Anyway, after that lovely olfactory note, thanks for tuning in. On this episode, we'll be talking Assassin's Creed, as you might have guessed from the opening joke, and Hellblade, as you might not have guessed from the opening joke.
Maybe you did.
I felt like I shouldn't make a joke about Hellblade, since it's like a capital I important game.
I think puns are fine.
Fair enough. Smellblade.
There you go.
So I guess without any further ado, especially since I was literally playing Assassin's Creed like right up until 5 minutes ago, we should jump right into our old game this week, Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
I neglected to do any kind of actual, development of the game research because I was too busy being like, I'm going to learn about this game by playing it.
Wow, Malin. What a rookie move.
Seriously, it was a mistake. I didn't really think about it until just now, but here I am playing by the seat of my pants. Anyway, I'll tell my Assassin's Creed story. I hadn't played it till this morning, but I did buy it at GameStop, I guess a couple months ago, because I was doing it for my birthday. And I got Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 for like probably $5 put together. So,
it's not even that old of a game. I mean, it's in our older than 10 years category, but first one came out in 2007. So, I mean, I guess once it's on an older system, it's on an older system and the thing goes down. But it's interesting that they still are selling it for like $2 a piece.
Well, but if you have a PS4 you want to play, one of the recent Assassin's Creeds.
Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know. Josh was telling me that like maybe some of them have some kind of a linear story progression.
I think the like future parts maybe do, but I don't think the main like gameplay really ties into each other that much.
Anyway, I was hoping that the first Assassin's Creed would be set in Rome, so I could start to like learn the geography and stuff, and like how to push past people politely and climb on stuff and all that.
Yes, that's what they do in Rome, I think. Parkour.
Yeah, well, that seems to be what Assassin's Creed is about. A parkour enthusiast ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be my summary of the game. But no, the first Assassin's Creed is set like in the Middle East, sort of, somewhere. It's like the Crusades.
Mm-hmm.
I've played like about an hour of it. It's been a lot of exposition, obviously, so far. I have gotten to kill some people, so
That's all you need.
yeah.
They're already delivering upon the title's promise.
I have also confirmed what I already knew, which is that I am not very good at platforming. But I'll go back to that. I should circle back. So, Assassin's Creed, for those of you who are not familiar with the series or the recent movie, and if you're not familiar with the series, you probably aren't familiar with the recent movie.
Well, it had Michael Fassbender in it, so maybe you are.
If you're a Fast fan,
Yeah.
Fassbenderette, maybe you know it and you aren't familiar with the video game series, but come on, how many of you are there out there, really?
Yeah.
So Assassin's Creed, it's a series of games that's about, like, you play as this guy, I can't remember his name now, it's with an M, Mr. Miles. Duncan, maybe. I think his first name was something weirdly dorky. They said it once, I was like, that's weird. And you don't really play as him, but you used to be an assassin, and now you're a bartender, as all bartenders are. It's a training path. But because you like have this like assassin history, and your family is like a family of assassins, you have this whole ancestry of assassin great grand uncles twice removed, or whatever. We haven't really talked about who this guy is that we're talking about, your ancestor and how you're related. Seems like there should be like a genealogy mini game somewhere in this game. Where it's like, draw your family tree. But basically, you've been brought into this research facility because they want to unlock these genetic memories stored in your DNA, because apparently your whole, like, you store all of the memories of your relatives in your DNA, which sounds like some pseudoscience BS to me.
Genetic memory is a real concept, actually.
I know that, and like they were hand waving it with like, how do birds know where to migrate?
That's not quite what it means, but genetic memory is an actual like not a widely accepted scientific concept, but still a scientific concept.
I know, but I don't think that my genetic memory holds a video game version of my ancestors.
Maybe it does.
Wouldn't that
Maybe
be neat?
you will eat those words one day.
Maybe I will. You're right. You know, that would be cool. I wouldn't be upset.
I don't know how cool our ancestors were, though.
Well, maybe there's. Who knows?
I guess so. Who knows?
I have literally no idea. Anyway, so you've been tasked with sort of going back into these memories through this animus system and stabilizing them so we can get to some kind of important memory. I don't know. This scientist guy seems a little shady, so...
Scientist shady in my video game?
What is it with video games and their distrust of scientists?
I don't know. They're kind of, like, the people who make them are kind of sciencey, so I don't know what the deal is with that.
I don't know.
Just
I feel
like the concept of the mad scientist, I guess, is pretty easy.
Maybe. I don't know. Mad scientist. That's bad mental health representation right there.
Yeah, I guess so. True enough.
Maybe you're right, but I also feel like it's just weird. It's like, why are we hating on scientists all the time? I feel like all the time in video games, like if you meet the scientist, like something is off there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this guy seems a little shady. I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. Maybe I just think he's shady because he's a scientist.
Maybe.
But yeah, you're like in this one, the first one that I'm playing. You're in the Crusades. You are an assassin. You like screwed something up in your first assassin mission, and now who knows what's gonna happen. It's been fun so far. Sort of. It seems like it's mostly going to be a button masher once I can break myself of the habit that square is like block dodge roll. It's gonna be better.
Yeah. I mean, it is the first one, so it sort of makes sense that there might be some clunkiness to it still.
No, I just mean that like I have a really hard time switching between games that have kind of similar control sets.
Oh yeah, I mean, yes, I know.
So it is when I was mostly playing kind of Kingdom Hearts and Persona, that wasn't really as much of a problem because Persona doesn't have too much like active control.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it prompts you to what it is. When previously, like when I was switching more between like Kingdom Hearts and Skyrim, or now when I'm switching between it and Assassin's Creed. Or even when I'm jumping systems and I've moved to like Breath of the Wild or something, I have a really hard time when I try to press buttons that I wish we had a universal control scheme, basically. That's what I'm saying.
You can reset controls that might they have different control schemes that maybe something makes more sense.
Who do you think I am?
I don't know, Malin. I don't know who you are.
I'm kind of prissy, like entitled, elitist person do you think I am? Customized control schemes? No way. Never ever.
I have a lot of problems with that too. Like any real-time combat games, like that have slightly different control schemes or really different control schemes. If I try to switch back and forth between the two, it never works out very well.
Mostly because in any real-time combat, I'm in a constant state of panic. Especially in this game where I'm still working out like what do bad guys look like and what do civilians look like.
Does it matter in Assassin's Creed?
Do you know what the Assassin's Creed is?
Don't harm civilians?
That's number 1.
Really?
Yeah. Number 1 is don't kill innocents. They say it in like a nicer way, but don't slaughter the good folks. Number 2, I don't remember.
You're doing a great job, Valid.
Number 3 is like don't put the clan in danger. I can't remember the second one. It's something else. It's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Is it like the laws of robotics? Is there like a priority list?
No, I think it's just bad when you do them.
Okay.
It's just bad. Like, I got stabbed because I broke all 3. But now apparently I'm fine. I don't know. I had just started that scene and then you were like, ready to record now. And I was like, oh well.
Oh well.
But yeah, so Assassin's Creed, obviously very popular game series. There have been a lot of entries now, sort of spanning the entire globe.
Yeah.
And when we were at Games for Change, this is a very Games for Change themed episode, actually.
Yeah.
Sort of. Not real. I mean, like, it's hard to say Assassin's Creed is a game for change, but here we go. But Assassin's Creed, someone from their team actually came. Yeah, the historian, which, like, what a cool gig. Can you imagine getting to tell people, like, oh, yeah, like, I'm a historical consultant for Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Like, that's the coolest thing you can do with your history PhD that's, like, ever happened.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm sure that all forms of media probably have historic consultants.
Oh, they do.
Yeah. But I guess you're probably not a staff historian a lot of places.
That's just wild. It's like, I'm the staff historian for Assassin's Creed. Like, that's a great, like, a Tinder bio.
Yeah.
Like, that's enough.
Yeah.
To get someone to swipe to be like, you know what? Like, whatever. Like, ugly dude, but like...
He wasn't ugly.
No, he wasn't.
Perfectly normal looking.
This has nothing to do with the actual person. I'm just saying. Like, you could be pretty weird looking, and if you're the staff historian for Assassin's Creed, I think you'd still get plenty of curious, like, swipes.
That's true. That's true. But he came to Games for Change as one of, like, their big keynote things to talk about. Their most recent game is Assassin's Creed Origins, which I think is actually kind of more disconnected from the rest of the series. They, like, did, like, a soft reset a little bit on the story parts.
It's more of an open world kind of
yeah.
game, I think, than the
Yeah.
previous ones.
Yeah, but it's set in ancient Egypt. And as part of one of their projects, they decided, like, hey, we've got, like, this sort of pseudo-historically accurate map of Egypt. Like, obviously, things are maybe a little bit closer than they actually were. But there are all these, like, buildings that were important that we made accurately and da-da-da. So they're like, why don't we make a mode that you can use for educational purposes? So they made the Discovery Tour for people to use in schools and are sort of venturing out into trying to use these for educational purposes,
Yeah,
which I think is really cool.
They showed us some footage of some pilot programs.
Yeah.
Now, it was interesting to me that they then showed data at this presentation saying, like, well, they didn't score as well as if they'd had, like, direct instruction in this.
Yeah.
But they did still learn.
Think that having worked at an educational games company.
Whoa.
The games work best when there's a mixture of the game with direct instruction as opposed to just giving them the game. So, from what I recall of the trial, it was like they played the game themselves or they got a lesson on it.
Yeah.
Right? There wasn't, like, any in-between, I don't think. So I think it would have been interesting to see data on that. But it was nice that the researcher came up and was like, Ubisoft just let me do my research and, didn't try to influence the trial in any way. So it's good that they seem to at least be serious about it and not just... I mean, partially it's a promotional thing, I'm sure, but it's not just, like, trying to make themselves look good. They're trying to make themselves look good while actually doing good at it. So...
And I just want to point out, like, and I think I might have mentioned this when we were talking about the Games for Change conference on the podcast, like, back at the end of June, July. But we definitely came up with the idea of, like, an educational tour game, like, way back in, like, our God of War episode.
Yeah,
or
God
something.
of War Pokemon Go.
We definitely came up with this. So, like, Ubisoft.
You owe us money, Ubisoft.
I'm gonna title this podcast, like, Ubisoft stole my game idea.
Donnez-moi ma I don't remember the word for money. Cash. Donnez-moi ma cash. Ubisoft Montreal.
That's good. But yeah, we came up with it in, like, January of 2017.
Almost definitely ahead of them.
Almost certainly before they started development. Like, 100%.
Definitely.
They probably listened to the podcast. They were like, let's fast track that. But, it's a cool mode. And to be fair, these kids were like, they played like a 12-minute segment. They did like one history tour.
Yeah.
And then took the post-test.
Yeah.
So that does feel like a very small amount of instruction. But I don't know. It would be cool. It would be cool to be like, to make the game part of the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Even in kind of an unstructured way, because it'd be such a huge temptation, right? It's like, okay, you're gonna have a test, like, you should study these areas, and I'm just gonna let you loose in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And theoretically, you could just, like, run around doing whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they would actually combine it with gameplay from Assassin's Creed. Like, you're trying to learn while you're also, like, stab, hide.
Couldn't quite use that in as many schools.
Yeah, but people would play it more.
I guess that's true. But I think they're probably going to do the same thing with their new Odyssey game, which was ancient Greece. So it'll be interesting to see what changes they make to that version.
And it was amazing to see sort of how accurate and how much detail went into the maps.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this in our last full episode. This is very confusing to me because behind the scenes note, like we're recording this podcast and last week's very close together. So
We're not. It's Sunday.
Yep, you're right. It's Sunday, the 25th. No,
but yeah, we
it's
were
not,
talking
the
about it.
26th.
Was it last episode or was it the one before that? It was the one before that.
It was the one before that. You're right. I'm a mess. The one about Fallout.
Yes.
We are talking about maps and the relative impressiveness of creating an original world versus recreating a location that actually exists. And I just think it's like in Assassin's Creed, like there's no reason for them to have a map that's like actually accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know. No one would really know. The staff historian would like cringe and cry, but like no one else would know. But it's interesting that they, and impressive, and kudos to them for going to that effort of creating a map that even if like in actual kind of distance you travel isn't like accurate, because you don't want to just like wander across desert for like an hour to get to your next objective, is still very much based on historical fact. Something else I'm always fascinated by, and it goes back to my obsession with civilization, I think, is Assassin's Creed also has like an encyclopedia thing, right? Where it's like you can learn about different things, like an in-game encyclopedia.
Probably.
Like, again, like I guess you have to have a staff historian, but I just can't imagine like being the person that writes that. For any game, really, any game that has some kind of like monster guide or whatever, somebody has to write the copy for that.
Yeah, somebody's like the flavor text writer.
That would also be cool. Assassin's Creed flavor text. It's a good LinkedIn like lead.
Yeah, somebody has to write some. There are games where I don't know if Assassin's Creed does, but there's descriptions of weapons and armor, and they have to name the weapons and armor things, and somebody writes that.
It's just weird. You never think about that when you're thinking about video game designers. You're like, there's someone at their computer, and like someone's animating.
Well, they're probably still at their computer.
Okay, thank you.
They don't long-hand it out first.
No, it's like, welcome, hi, welcome to Ubisoft. So glad to have you. Thanks for coming aboard as the flavor text writer. I know we have some free laptops over here, but those are actually not for you.
Yes.
Here is your typewriter.
Here's your parchment and quill. We want it to be as historically accurate as possible.
You'll be sitting in a non-air-conditioned room.
So we'll be immersing you in historical accuracy. Here's some papyrus. I expect this in hieroglyphics. Okay.
Welcome.
Aren't you so glad you came on?
Feel free to take half an hour for lunch at some point. You know what? I feel a little bad roasting this company for no reason, but also they stole our game idea, so I feel less bad.
It's okay. Ubisoft can handle a little roasting. They've got lots of money.
That's true. That is very true.
They can handle a little bit of joking, fake criticism from a small video game podcast.
Wow. You gotta affirm yourself. A significant video game podcast.
True.
Assassin's Creed also notable for having spawned yet another terrible video game movie.
Yeah. Well, like a fine one.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, Fassbenderettes.
I didn't actually see it.
But
my impression was that it was probably very visually impressive and very dry to watch.
Yeah, it's just like, even having just started it, I can tell that this would be a bad movie. Because it's just like this evil science. It's like Avatar, right? It's like
honestly, they should have cut out like the evil science part, in my opinion, and just like chose an assassin and a historical part of the world and made a story about that. Like that's what seems like a perfectly serviceable, entertaining action romp, as opposed to adding in like the science mumbo jumbo that is complicated enough that just like trying to fit it into a movie on top of an Assassin's Creed story seems a little much.
I sort of also feel that way about the game. I mean, granted, I'm like 90 minutes in, but I'm like, why do we have this? I don't want to walk around and have to like sit on my little bed and get locked in my room.
Well, you'll have to get further into it and see how the story goes. But I think just have the benefit of having more time to do stuff with it, which is a great benefit of video games, allows for more strange storytelling techniques.
You're telling me you don't want to see a 40-hour Assassin's Creed movie?
If they wanted to make a TV show or a limited series, oftentimes I think sometimes that like limited series are the way to go for movie adaptations that just aren't working. You know, video games, any anime shows. It's like, why are you trying to compress an entire show into a movie or an entire video game into a movie without like changing it up to fit the movie structure?
There we go. That's what I was going to say. You caught what I was going to say. I was going to be like, well, you could change it to a movie as long as you know what small slice of the story you want to tell.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but if you're trying to cram everything in there, it doesn't work. Anyway, you can listen to our debate on video game movies from a while back.
Yeah, or watch old episodes, or not watch. I mean, I guess sort of. You're looking at it with your eyes. Read the old Watch This blog.
Yeah.
On Dead of Light.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of cramming things in, sort of, let's talk about Hellblade.
Alright. Well, Hellblade is an action game from Ninja Theory, which is a small developer that's made a lot of sort of cult indie type hits, but had never really broken into the mainstream. It's like they called it a AA game, which means that it has like AAA quality, but it's like smaller than a AAA game. And AAA is like Assassin's Creed. It's made by companies like Ubisoft, just in case you have no experience on it. So it's also priced at smaller amounts, which was significant at the time. But Hellblade is about Senua. The full name is Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. It's set in sort of Norse mythology era. And Senua is going on a quest to Hell with one L to see Hela, the goddess, in order to ask her to bring her dead beloved back to life. But what's particularly significant about it, I mean, a lot of things in terms of game development, like differences and different ways you can make a game. But it's also a depiction of psychosis, which is a specific mental illness that has a lot of different symptoms, including like hearing voices and seeing patterns in your environment and some hallucinations. It depends on the person, obviously, who's experiencing it. But it's one of the most major releases to really actually delve into mental illness in any significant way.
And it also got a lot of airtime / discussion at Games for Change.
Yeah, it was up for awards. I don't think anybody from... And we listened to people talk about it in sessions, but nobody from Ninja Theory actually
Right, no one from Ninja Theory was there, but I do feel like in any session that is even kind of tangentially adjacent to mental health and video games or representation in video games, it got at least a shout out, if not more in-depth discussion.
Mm-hmm. So I played a little bit of Hellblade. I didn't finish it because I started playing it during college, and then, college happened. But I went back and played the beginning again during last night. I couldn't play it for very long because playing it at night is not the best idea in the world for me, personally. But they also did, the development process is really fascinating, and we can go into it a little bit more because they have really detailed developer diaries. But they use binaural audio, which means they use a mic that sort of simulates a human head in that the sound gets placed when you record it. So, like, if you're listening to this podcast right now, we're mostly coming through pretty evenly from both ears, right? Like, it's just, like, filtering through your headphones, going into your ears. But the way binaural audio works is, like, the sound will, like, come from somewhere. So it's meant to place you more in depth into a space. So the reason they use this was to have the voices in Senua's head, as they are in a lot of people who have psychosis, actually be placed inside her head. Like, it's not just like they just hear voices, it's like the voices are like in parts of, like they hear it from places. So like, there's sort of like a narrator voice, who, it's hard to describe, but it's like placed like right under your like left jawbone, I guess. Like sort of near, like I can feel it in my pulse point when I hear it. So you actually have to wear headphones to play this game in its fullest, because that's how the binaural audio works, by coming through different parts of your headphones. Which can be very overwhelming, especially during the more intense scenes, but also very helpful for like incorporating it into combat, because your voices will sometimes like be like over here. You know, usually in games they'll do this with like an arrow on the screen, or somebody will be like on your right. But in this, you can actually like hear where the combat is coming from, so you can turn around and address it, which is a very sort of natural way to experience combat.
That's really cool, because part of the reason that I feel like I'm really bad at first-person type games is that, you know, you'll hear gunfire or like groaning zombies or whatever. It's like, obviously, if I was actually there, I would hear it from a direction, and I would know where not to go or where to go, depending on my goal in the moment. Whereas if I'm playing it on my very high-tech video game setup here, tuck this in my CHQ, I'm like, well, someone's shooting a gun.
Yeah. So many third-person shooters I played, and I like see the gunfire. I'm like, well, they're somewhere. They're shooting at me. Guess I'll go find them. But in this, it's more like, it really does feel more like you're in the space, I guess. Again, it's sort of hard to describe. If you watch a video of it or play it yourself, you can kind of experience for yourself.
And they're also bringing Hellblade, I've seen, to VR.
Oh, really? I mean, that kind of makes sense, I think.
Yeah, for PC, not for PlayStation. They made a big deal out of this. It's a pretty recent announcement.
Well, they were just, actually, Ninja Theory was just bought by Microsoft.
Oh.
So that's probably why.
Well, what they were saying was, it's really, the experience is designed, like they say, even if you have a PC, it needs to be a really, really high power processor.
I mean, again, it makes sense.
Yeah, and that the PlayStation, again, always surprises me that video game consoles are like low power computers from like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But like always shocks me without fail. Even though I've been reading about it a lot lately, I'm like, wow, that's weird that like they suck.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently it needs a lot to really run smoothly, perhaps not surprisingly.
Yes, it's not that surprising. And the PSVR is definitely, like, while a great commercial option, is a commercial option. It's not for, like, serious gamers, you know?
I like that. Do that again.
Serious gamers.
It should be our new slogan.
Not so serious gamers.
Yeah. But yeah, Hellblade has mostly, I mean, it's been hailed a lot as a you know, very stunning visually, and Emma's talking already about these development things that are really cool. But I feel like a lot of the press that Hellblade has gotten, and the accolades that it's gotten, it won like 5 BAFTAs and all that too, is centered around this idea of it being this kind of first game on a, you know, I know it's not a AAA, but like of this high profile, to attempt to depict mental illness in a compassionate, it's almost not the right word, but accurate way, and a thoughtful way.
Thoughtful works, yeah. I mean, when you play the game, the opening sequence is like the opening credits, And the very first credits they show are their mental health consultant and their historical consultant.
Oh, I also want to call back to Assassin's Creed because I thought it was funny that on their kind of like opening loading screen, they're like, this game was made by a team with diverse backgrounds of religion and ethnicity. You know, like it was weird. It was like an interesting. It's like a weird little like, okay. But that's cool that those are the first people that they credit.
Yeah. And, like, again, they have, like, 25 development diaries that go into literally every aspect of the game production, including their talks with people who possess psychosis, which they talk to small groups of to get all of their experience. I think they've mentioned that their goal was, like, kind of to provide, like, it's not going to match any one particular diagnosis of psychosis, but they tried to take aspects of everybody's experience to make it into this version that they show, which is, I mean, you know, a decent way to go about it, I think, as opposed to just being like, this one person's psychosis in the game. And of course, they also had to find ways to make it mesh with the game itself. So, like, the sort of pattern finding, which I think is one of the aspects of some psychosis, turns into, like, puzzle-solving mechanics a little bit within the game.
And we went to this great panel on mental health representations in games. That raises an interesting point that there is a lot, like, it's not like we don't see people with mental health disorders in gaming, because we do. Actually, if you think about it and you go back to your games, you won't have noticed it. Like, I didn't think about, like, the example that they called out, which I was like, I don't even think of these as being human, is the psychos and the maniacs in Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I was like, I've literally thought of these things as like being some kind of different creature.
Yeah.
But evidently you can sort of think of that as like, well, like they're called psychos, they're humanoid. Yeah. What is that? What are we really saying here?
Yeah.
And so if you go and you look through your game collection, you'll be surprised to find how many times you do see, you know, characters, if you can even call them that, with some kind of a mental illness. In the game, but certainly not depicted in a positive or a thoughtful or an accurate light.
Yes.
And I thought that was fascinating, because when they said that, I was like, because they gave some percentage, and I wish I remembered what the number was off the top of my head, but it was like a startlingly high plurality of games have some kind of mental health representation.
Mm-hmm.
And they even have, for Hellblade, they have like a site where you can get like more information about this and like help if it's triggering, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading, and I want to talk about this a little, although not too much, an article from a writer on Polygon who does suffer from some kind of it seems she doesn't go into detail about sort of what her diagnosis is, which absolutely, that's fine, that's her right. It seems like it's something that is not so different from some kind of psychosis adjacent thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who was giving sort of her thoughts on the game. And it was interesting to me that she even continued to play the game, because she described it as being like very triggering for her own symptoms, and it was like she was talking about the pattern matching, which I sort of thought was like, oh, if you suffer from a similar mental illness, this is probably like this will be even easier for you, right? But she said that she and her partner, who also has some kind of mental illness, were like had a really hard time with this. Like they thought they were doing it right, and then the game was telling them they were doing it wrong.
It is a little bit buggy.
Sure.
You have to be like sort of in a particular position, but I think that has more to. Well, you can continue. I think it's more to do with like the design. It has some issues.
And so she was talking about, you know, who is this game? Well, there's a couple of things in the article I want to talk about, but one is like, who is this game really for, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really for people. Oh my gosh, the term for it has slipped my mind. You know, when you don't have a mental illness, there's like an adjective for it.
People who don't have it.
Yeah, I know, but there's like a term for it, but I don't remember what it is. But it's for those people. It's
Mhm.
not really designed for people with this illness. But then she raised a point that I want to discuss further a little bit, which is she was saying like, well, like, okay, what has this game done to make anyone's life who actually has a mental illness better?
Mhm.
Which felt like this is something that I was thinking about a lot when we were at the Games for Change festival, but also feels like a very unfair bar to ask a game to clear.
Yeah.
It just feels like to say, you know, how has this game that, you know, it's been a successful game, but how many people do you think have played Hellblade? Like, maybe a couple million?
Yeah.
If even that many?
The game sold over 1 million copies across all platforms by June 2018.
Okay, so like maybe 2 million people. Maybe. And probably most of those just, I don't know. I don't know how people's video games habits are, right? But like a large proportion of those did not finish the game.
It's like 2 million people who have had any sort of experience with the game, whether they were watching it or played some of it or finished it, I think is probably a fair estimate.
And it's just a lot to ask of saying, hey, this game that like 2 million people have had some experience with and probably, you know, maybe 750,000 have actually finished. Like, what has this done to improve, like, real... I don't know.
Yeah.
It's something I struggle with as an artist, right? Because on one hand, it's like, no, if it's not, like, causing real... If you're claiming to be a game that has some kind of social good as your goal, right, and it's not causing any kind of real, tangible social good, it's hard to be like, that's fine. Like, you really want to be actually doing that. On the other hand, it's a game.
Yeah. So my opinion is, I don't think Ninja Theory has ever come out and been like, this game will change everyone's minds as it comes to people who have mental illnesses. Like, I don't think they have. If they have, send me the link to the article, and I will admit that I'm wrong. But I think they just wanted to tell this story to tell it, not necessarily to intentionally do anything with it. But my opinion, and for all representation, this is my opinion. You have to start somewhere. I think that like wide representation can cause social shifts over time.
Neurotypical. Sorry, that's the word. It took me a minute to get back.
If you start seeing, for example, like Crazy Rich Asians that's coming out, which is very different than this, but is the first like primarily Asian cast movie since like the Joy Luck Club, and is the first Asian actress to be like in a rom-com in the West, like ever, like as the main character. And like, is that gonna change everybody's minds about like who can act in this, or change people's minds about how they feel about Asian people? No, probably not. But once you get that representation, once people start seeing them in movies and normalizing them in different roles, like, then that happens. But you have to start somewhere, right? So, like, with Hellblade, like, it has mental health representation. It shows the video game industry that you can do it, that 20 people can put together a game that is successful and somewhat accurate and tells a good story. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe we can do that. And then once you start playing that over and over again and seeing those more healthy depictions of mental illness, you're like, oh, so this is what mental illness is. It's not crazy people come in with shotguns trying to shoot me, you know? It's more like a gradual thing. Like, that's how I feel about empathy games. It's like, yes, one empathy game is not going to change people's minds. But if they play a whole bunch of games that have that same message of empathy, whether they're focused on it or not, then that starts to make some sort of ripple effect.
And I think it disregards the conversations that people will have about, well, I don't know. Do people like talk about video games?
Yeah.
I know. Like, I do because I play video games in a space where, like, I necessarily have to share it with Clickbait Boyfriend, right? Like,
I mean, I think the video game online discussion space is a very unhealthy place right now. And I wish that that would change. And I think that it's just a crisis of, the changing culture in the game industry that we're just going to have to sort of push through and eventually have that change. And there's still places you can go and you can find groups that talk with. That's a whole other discussion. That's a whole other Gamergate discussion that I don't want to go into. But it's like you can't expect one game or one movie or one TV show to change the world, right? It's the consistency of doing it.
Yeah, it always these kinds of think pieces. They bother me, and that's not to say that there's not valid points in them. But I feel like anytime some movie or television show or even high-profile game comes out that is trying to make an effort to step forward for representation, it's like the best way to get clicks is to be like, here's why this is still problematic.
Yeah.
Right? And it bothers me. Not that these are not important discussions to have. Like, on the example of Crazy Rich Asians, one of my Facebook friends, who is an Asian American, posted, about how, like, within Asian American and Asian, like, discussions of this movie, there's a lot more discussion about, like, wow, like, look at all of these, like, they're all Chinese, right? And they're able-bodied and, like, slim and attractive, right? And so, like, is this really very good representation? Like, not really, right? Which, like, those are important conversations to have, but not at the expense of being like, this is a step forward.
Yeah.
And that's what they were saying in this Facebook post, because it was juxtaposed with, like, Asian people, like, we're talking about this, white people, picture of Mamma Mia, here we go again.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, it just bothers me, these articles, and I feel like we've talked about an article of like this before, and I can't remember what it was about. I do remember. It was about, like, all of these. It was about, like, Master of None and Hassan Minhaj and all of these, like, Indian American and Middle Eastern and that kind of area of the world comics who are all coming up at the same time and how they all romance white women and, like, what a problem that is. And it's like, okay, sure, I guess, but, like, let's.
Yeah. I feel that way too. I feel like sometimes, like, a movie will come out that takes a step forward, and it's not a bounding step, sure. And there's always, like, someone's like, but it doesn't show this. It's like, it can't show everything. It's a movie. It has a story. It's not just there, to be like, look, here is everything ever in the world. And you just can't expect one piece of media to represent everything. It's just not. It's not something that is possible.
Yeah, and something else I wanted to talk about quickly that this article mentioned was she was particularly upset by the fact, and I was intrigued by this, that in this game the mental illness, her psychosis it's portrayed as something that is not bad.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, it helps her. She's able, because she isn't neurotypical, she's able to use this mental, like, her, like, almost superpowers, right? To solve puzzles that other people wouldn't be able to.
Sure.
And it was interesting to me that this writer was like, she's like, my mental illness has, like, never been useful to me ever. Like, it's always been just, like, a horrible burden that I've had to medicate and, like, take care of.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to read that when I feel like I also read a lot of stuff from friends that I know that have, like, autistic siblings or work with children with special needs who are pushing to treat that, not as a disorder or an illness, but just, something that isn't neurotypical, but is just as good.
Yeah.
And so I thought, like, when I was first thinking about Hellblade, I was like, oh, that's cool that they sort of show her mental illness as being an asset and, like, not as an illness all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, I certainly can't speak to whether for Psychosis that is a thing that is true to life.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for that either, although I would say in my experience playing the game, and I haven't finished it, so, you know. And while it does help her get through some puzzles, it's also super highly unpleasant. Like, the voices are really unpleasant. There are points, like, where it sort of overwhelms her, and then she then cannot do things that other people could possibly without, like, the cacophony happening around you. And so, like, even if it helps her in some ways, it still doesn't show it, I think, as like a pleasant or ideal or I can't think of like a good word for it. But it's, you know, it's a little bit like, it's like, yeah, this can solve some puzzles, but it's not like superheroes like, oh man, I wish I was Spider-Man. Oh man, I wish, you know.
I just think the writer was more upset that sort of her mental illness was used as like more of a metaphor than of like an actual
I guess so. Yeah.
Which is, of course, it's a fine line to walk.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, to sort of wrap this up, because I think we should start making our new game.
Yes.
I don't know. I think steps forward in representation and like whatever. This is a very, maybe this isn't a cruel position, but it's like they have to be gradual. It would be great if they could not be.
Yeah.
Right? It would be great. I would like to live in that world where the steps in representation could be bounds at a time.
Yeah.
And maybe we do, and I would love to be proven wrong that people would accept like a giant leaping bound forward in representation, right? And maybe they would.
But I still even think that a giant leaping bound forward in representation would not change the world. You know, like, yes, you would have someone very different on the screen, but it's still a matter of like small steps and big steps and everything in between that then shows like, that then is like, oh, I can enjoy this, or oh, this is normal, or oh, like my understanding is now changed. So like you could show like, you know, the most different atypical person ever, and it's not like that would be any more impactful on its own than anything else. That's just my opinion, though. It'd be impactful for those people who are also like that, and that's not a terrible thing. But if you're actually wanting to make a overwhelming societal change, then you need a lot of different things.
Alright, so let's wade into the tricky territory of trying to mash these two games together.
Yeah. Assassin's Creed in the Norselands.
Oh my god, that's too boring.
There, I did it. Let's move. Okay, sign off now.
I mean, like, that would be a good game. They'll probably make that game at some point.
They probably will, yeah.
Just saying, here it is. August 2018. Talk This Podcast suggests a Norse mythology-based Assassin's Creed. See if they steal it again.
They're probably gonna. Ubisoft, we know you're there. It's not the little FBI man in my microphone. It's Ubisoft.
A direct feed. No. So this is tricky, right? Because I don't want to. Because I feel like you have to include something about the mental health representation. I'm just gonna give a big disclaimer here that like nothing we say is meant as like insensitive.
Yes, we have not done the extensive research that Ninja Theory did.
Obviously, if we actually made this game, we would do extensive research.
Yes.
Okay, so hear me out here. So, like, Assassin's Creed, but you're an assassin with like, major paranoia and anxiety.
Okay.
And so, like, you really are an assassin, right? Like, you really do need to kill people. There really are people out to kill you. But, like, you think that there are many more than there actually are. And it's a matter of sort of wading through that paranoia and finding the real ones. And engaging in enough self-care for your assassin that he doesn't, like, panic and kill the wrong person.
I think think that's possible. Yeah. I mean, paranoia and anxiety seem like pretty natural conditions to develop in the life of an assassin.
Yeah.
So that seems to make sense. I think there are ways you could tie that into mechanics in engaging ways of the UI or whatever that like tells you what's a threat is always inaccurate, so you have to actually rely on sort of context clues and like thinking straight for yourself to like actually get through the mission.
And Assassin's Creed actually already has something like that a little bit built in.
Mm-hmm.
So like you have this like eagle sight, right? Which you can press triangle and people will like glow colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see who's normal, who's a guard and a threat, who's your assassination target, whatever. But you can only use eagle sight when you're all the way synced with the guy, with the memory.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you've gotten a hurt or you've been like spotted by a guard or whatever, your synchronization will go down and you can't use that. So I think we can just like expand that already existing mechanic into a much more central gameplay kind of tenet.
Yeah.
So that's an option. Also, your assassin should probably be a woman. It's about time.
Yeah, probably. Well, there will be a woman. It's a woman option in Odyssey. So.
Oh, right. They have like a cover you can flip, right?
A cover you can flip?
Like the game cover, you'll be able to like.
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I was seeing that. Yeah, well, it's about time, guys. Come on.
Yeah, seriously. They got in some trouble a while back for like Assassin's Creed multiplayer. There were no women options.
Eek.
And they were like, it would take a lot longer. And then animators were like, no, it wouldn't.
What a mess.
Yeah. That sounds good, though. That seems like a good one. Obviously, it would need a lot more fleshing out. We'd have to come up with an actual story, too.
You're like an old assassin. You're like, we would need a historian and a mental health counselor. We'd really have to like employ a whole university. But yeah, we'd have like you're like an old assassin, not old, like middle-aged, past your prime. And so after all of these years of doing assassinations, you've developed this incredible anxiety and paranoia. And now you've been called in for another mission, but like the whole game, it's like maybe the twist at the end is that like the mission, like it wasn't based on anything at all. It was all paranoia. That'd be depressing.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. But I think that's solid. I think that's a solid premise.
Well, Ubisoft is listening, so look for it in September.
I don't know
2020.
if I trust Ubisoft to make that. Sorry, Ubisoft. I'm sure you're expanding. You're going slow, but it's okay. Anyway, that's been our episode.
Thanks for tuning in. Emma, do you have an actual hat?
Oh, crap.
Okay.
No.
Well, you're pulling up your random number generator. I'll start pitching our show. So, hey, if you liked what you heard today, why don't you make sure you never miss an episode of Talk This? We release every Sunday at noon, or noonish. Is it really every Sunday at noon? You control this.
Noon exactly.
Wow! Every Sunday at noon exactly. Well, you don't ever want to miss that. Sometimes you might forget. You'd be like, oh, it's 12:11. I had 11 minutes. I could have been listening to Talk This. So if you never want to miss an episode, why don't you subscribe? We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere podcasts are downloadable. So you should subscribe. If you liked what you listened to, give us a rating, leave us a review if you've got any thoughts. And you can also find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Talk This Podcast, where we post all of our latest musings from the blog, which I'll talk about in a minute, as well as articles. I'll probably post the article that I was talking about, and other curiosities and memes and whatnot. So you should really follow us there. We're also on YouTube at Talk This Sisters. So you should subscribe to us there as well. We have Clickbait Boyfriend mini vlogs. There's some good ones coming. And we have, most importantly, our flagship YouTube series, Play This.
Yeah.
Also, Also, if you like the podcast, you should check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com. There you can read more about the show, more about us, find our back catalog, and also check out our blog, where you can find the Clickbait Boyfriend blog series, which comes out every Tuesday. We're in the middle of Birth by Sleep now. You can find Split Screen, which comes out every Monday, except maybe not tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
It might be late this week because I'm in Rome, but it will come out and then go back to its regular Monday schedule, as well as Buzz This, the old Watch This series, X Thoughts and X Hours, lots of good content, so really you should check that out. And now, without any further ado, we'll pick our games for 2 weeks from now.
Yep. Yeah. What?
Our next full episode.
Oh, yes. Okay. I thought you said pick it twice. I was like, am I missing something? But no.
I'm sorry. I meant for our next 2 weeks, like in 2 weeks, not.
Okay. Yes. Our old game is Resident Evil.
Awesome. I've heard of that one. Good sign.
And our new game is Fortnite.
Oh man, it's finally time.
Fortnite.
Should I play?
Maybe you should. Maybe I should play. We should play together. We can't.
What?
I don't think we don't have the same system. You can't get Fortnite, can you?
Can you play it on the Switch?
Oh, you can. You're right.
So we should play together.
We should. We should play Fortnite.
All right.
Let's do it.
Coming in 2 weeks. Talk to sisters. Play Fortnite.
Quick before they start charging for online.
Yeah, right? Squeeze it in.
Yeah. But that we'll have Fortnite and Resident Evil, so we'll have a zombie battle royale next time.
I'd be into that. Zombie battle royale.
Do you want to sign us off
the
now?
The mashup is already done for 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, we're done. You don't even have to tune in.
Skip the last 10 minutes.
Do you want to sign us off?
I do want to sign us off. Have a week in which you feel that you take a small step forward